All right, welcome back. Once you have the OBS Studio downloaded, go into your Downloads folder, double-click on the Setup, and the installer will begin. Once you get to the point where it says Setup, click Next, and then Next again for the license, where you want to install it, and it will install in just a couple of short moments. You will have the opportunity afterwards to do some configuration, and we'll show that in the next segment. Once the installer gets to the end, it'll come up with a launch. Go ahead and launch the application at that point in time. At this point, you'll have an opportunity to auto-configure, and you should choose Yes. Moving to the next screen, choose Optimize for Streaming. Recording is secondary, and click Next. And then you will use 1920 by 1080. This will be important later on. Once you have that, you can make sure that you click Next to the next screen. And then we'll have an opportunity to choose our streaming service. There are a number of them listed here. This video is going to focus on getting Facebook set up. So as you look up and down the list, you'll see a bunch of different options: Facebook Live, the Restream, YouTube, and some of the others. At this point, what we're going to do is we're going to choose Facebook, and it's going to send us over to a screen that tells us to enter a stream key. And now this is where things start to get a little bit difficult, but click on the Get Stream Key, and this will take you over to the Facebook Create Live Stream page. Once we get there, you may be asked to log into Facebook, and that's just fine. Once you log into Facebook, you'll have the opportunity to set up what it is that you want OBS to be able to connect to. Make sure that you do allow it to upload videos and to manage whichever pages you desire for the streaming to be live on. Once that's finished, then you can continue through to the next page, which will be the Facebook Live Create page. Once we click the Go Live, it's going to bring us into the live stream API where we create our stream key. And you're going to want to just simply go down and hit Copy, come back to the Auto Configuration Wizard and hit Paste. And also, one other thing is, back in the Facebook page, make sure you check Use a Persistent Stream Key. That'll make things easier for you in the future. At that point, we're going to be back into OBS, and we're going to click Next. And as we move on, we're going to say yes to what is on the screen for the stream warning. The Auto Configuration Wizard is going to continue and go through some additional steps to make sure that the streaming setup is well configured to your PC or your Mac. Either way, at this juncture, we're now going to begin to see the final results. Most of those things you should just simply accept and hit Apply Settings once you get to the end of that option there. Once you've applied settings, then you're going to be in the OBS main screen. And at this point, we're going to kind of jump over to OBS Live and kind of take a look around to see how we begin to get things set up. Once we have OBS Studio set up, we're going to be presented with this screen, which is the main OBS screen. Across the top, you'll have your normal menu. And when we talk a little bit later about Streamlabs OBS, I do want you to realize that this menu does not exist in that product. And for that reason, some users prefer the OBS Studio, even though the Streamlabs version gives you some other options that may be valuable to you. In this screen, we basically have the top half, which is where we're going to see the sources that we end up creating and the scenes and other things. And then the lower half, where we have basically a number of options down here. We're going to have scenes. In OBS, whether it is OBS Studio or Streamlabs OBS, the most important segment that you have to create are called scenes. Scenes are independent views of what you want to present in your stream or your video that you may be recording. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a test scene. All right, we'll just call it Test 1. Click OK, and that scene will appear. And you'll notice that up here in the top, everything is still blank. This is where we get to the next section, which is sources. Every scene can have multiple sources. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you can see there are just a number of these different options that are here. Some of these we will not be covering at all in these videos, perhaps in more advanced videos dealing with OBS. The first thing that you want to add is your video capture device. All right, when we click on that, we can call it a number of different things. And by the way, you'll notice there's an add existing. If we already had a scene created that already had this video capture device, we could simply add that existing device, and all the configurations I will show you in a moment would already be in place. But I'm going to call this the Logitech Stream Cam. That's the unit that I'm using right now. And once I do that, I do want to make it visible, and I'm going to click OK. And then I have the properties screen that pops up, and this can be a daunting screen. If you just want to get video onto the screen, at this point, you would choose your device. All right, I only have one device. The Logi Capture is really a software front end to the Logitech Stream Cam. But I will choose a device that I want to use as my camera. And this can be very simplistic, such as this particular setup where I only have one webcam on this system. Or it can be very complex because you may have multiple cameras. If you have an external webcam and you have an internal webcam on a laptop, you'll have to choose between those at this point in time. You'll also have the option to deactivate it, meaning that it will not be active until you set it active later on. That's usually something that I recommend that you don't do, but please do know this, that once you have added this particular camera, it is going to be picking up video immediately. Another one that is very important is this configure video. All right, when you click on that, it's going to bring up another properties page. It's a sub properties page. And in this, you're going to have the video processing amp and the camera control. And different webcams will expose different options here. What you usually want to do is come over to the camera control, change the zoom to whatever you need it to be, turn off autofocus. However, remember, if you do that, you cannot be bobbing and weaving back and forth too much, even though most webcams do have a fairly very wide field of view. Just be careful that you don't move in and out of focus too much with this. Typically, you'll also turn off auto exposure as well. The reason you do that is if you have a light source that changes. For instance, if you look at one of my other videos, you'll see that the fish light or the light in the fish tank behind me goes out. The camera takes a few seconds to readjust itself, and that's what auto exposure is doing. So it's usually a good idea to just turn those two options off, and we'll kind of show you what that looks like when we do that. Coming back over to the video processing, you can change a lot of things like the white balance, the backlight compensation gain and all those. I won't do that now, but it's a good idea to play around with these settings, particularly if your light in the area that you're doing your streaming from is not good, or you haven't had a chance to add a lamp or something to help you out there. Go ahead and click OK. At this point, I'm going to leave everything else the same, and I'm just going to click OK. And once we do that, then the Logitech Stream Cam will be available to us at that point in time. Once we've added the video capture device, then you'll see that the camera actually does show up very similar to this here. And in this case, you'll notice that the camera has a fairly wide field of vision, so it's going to pick up a lot of stuff behind me, stuff over in the corner of the door, the fish tank, etc. And that's fine. You can always change your backdrop and refine this a little bit later on, and I'm not going to get into too much depth on exactly what needs to be done to do that. The next thing that we really want to do is if we want to have PowerPoint or Proclaim or some other source behind us where we can perhaps put our notes up, then we need to add some additional things here to this scene. So I'm going to take just a second here, and we're going to start up Proclaim in this case, and you can do this again. It doesn't matter whether you use Proclaim or whether you use some other software. However, one thing that we have found is that having a second monitor attached to your Mac or PC does make this a whole lot easier. And I'm going to get Proclaim up and just leave one of the backgrounds running that we use for our live on-air portions of our video. In doing this, I think that this really lends a little bit more professionalism to your live streaming. If you were at church, if you're using any type of overhead device, and I realize that most churches nowadays are probably using a projector or large TVs or something to put notes and words up overhead, then this is simply going to be an extension of something that you already know. If not, this will be a little bit more like you're in a classroom and perhaps using an overhead projector, television, or whatever you may use in those particular scenarios. So we still have our main scene, which is test one. We still have our single video capture device, but now what we're going to do is we're going to go about the process of adding
another source, and you'll notice that there are a lot of different options that show up in this list. What we want in this case is display capture if I have two monitors, or if I only have one monitor, then I can choose to actually do a window capture. A window capture will actually take a look at another running program on the PC or the Mac. I'm going to choose display capture just for ease of use. We'll just go ahead and let it be display capture. We'll make the source visible. And at this point, you're going to see that my screen goes crazy because it's picking up my primary monitor. And so I'm going to go down to display 2 and hit OK. And now what's going to happen is I'm going to snap this to the size of this window. And you'll notice that it is over top of my video. Now when I go over this, you can see that there is a window underneath. Under sources, it's simply a matter of ordering. The first one in the list has predominance. So we'll move the video capture device back above. Boom, there we go. Now we have a setup very similar to what Charity is using on Sundays. Proclaim is running in the background. I happen to have these two verses on a loop, and it's going to go round and round and round. And now I'm really ready to live stream. If I wanted to leave it like this, which is very simplistic, all right, then at this point I can come over to the Start Streaming, click that button, and I will actually be on live in Facebook. And I actually have gone live in Facebook right now. Down at the bottom, it'll tell you if you've dropped any frames. It'll tell you how long you've been live. It'll tell you if you're recording. We're not doing that at this point in time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop streaming so that I'm not letting the video feed into Facebook for too long. What I don't like about this setup is you don't necessarily know that you've gone live on Facebook unless you have some other device in front of you. So it might be a good idea to have your Android or iOS device just to make sure that you've gone live. Certainly if you have someone else working with you, all right, again at Charity we're small, so I'm handling most of this myself, but if you have someone else, they can make sure that you're live on Facebook, and then you won't be caught, with your kind of deer in the headlights look of, am I on or am I off, what's going on there, all right? So this is the very basic setup of OBS. Again, very simple to use in many respects. You can make a lot of changes. One thing I do want to show you right now is I'm going to take this test 1 and I'm going to actually duplicate this and create a second one, just test 1, 2. And you'll notice that if I switch back and forth between these scenes, there's really not a lot happening with them. So I'm going to do a little bit of magic here. I'm going to come over to test 2 and I'm going to actually remove the display capture. Am I sure? Yes. This will now have a black background. And now you'll see that as I go between the scenes, they're automatically changing. Let me do something else. I'm going to move the camera over to the right on test 1, 2. If I go back to test 1, we have the camera here. If I go to test 2, we have it over here. Now, I'm going to show you something even a little bit more interesting. Once you do this, you can actually go back and add other sources. So perhaps you have something else that you want to put up on the screen here, like a browser or something else, then you can go ahead and add that in, and it will actually come up and display. And I'm just going to use the default that happens. And notice I've just added a browser source. YouTube video could go here. Just be careful if you put a YouTube video in that it's not copyrighted so that it can't be reused. But again, you could stream a video here if you had a worship video or something like that. It would probably be okay for the live stream, but it may not be okay in the long run for your video to remain on YouTube. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close down OBS Studio. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the Streamlabs OBS and just show you a little bit of the differences in how this is set up. Now, here is one gripe that I do have. I know we're not supposed to complain as Christians, but I don't particularly like the fact that it takes as long as it does for the Streamlabs OBS to start up. Now, part of the reason for the lag in the startup is actually more related to the issue of what Streamlabs is doing over top of everything else. Now you'll notice that as soon as this popped up, the various scenes that I have created popped up right away. But I do want to have you notice there is no menu in Streamlabs. What they've done is they've come down with a side menu, okay? The top one is the one that brings us into the studio interface. The next two are probably things that you're never going to use. They are themes and other things that are available through Streamlabs. And again, they're attempting to upsell you, and most of this is designed for gamers. It's just not something you need. Here we have some popular plugins and other things. These are just things that I'm actually just trying out. They are not necessary, and if you never use any of this, then it won't really matter. These 4 things wouldn't appear in your initial setup. You can come down here and you'll notice that when you click on this little timeline thing here, it's going to actually show you a web page as to what's been happening in your Streamlabs account. All right, and again, I'm just going to close that down. I don't really need that. I then can also come to the editor, and at this point I can change the way that the layout of my Streamlabs looks. And this is kind of nice because a lot of times you will have different options for what you want to put in here. I just like a very simple stream display, the scene selector, the source selector, and the audio mixer. All right. You can also use what is oftentimes referred to as the split screen or the preview mode. And the preview mode will give you the option to basically come along and kind of see what is coming next in the Streamlabs interface. All right. So as I restart that, I can come down and click on this, and now I have 2 different things. So if I were to click up here, all right, on the streaming soon video or the pre-service loop, all right, or the announcements, and these are just similar types of layouts, I'm going to see in the left-hand side what could be the next scene, and then if I click transition, that's going to become the main scene. If you do not have a very strong i5 or i7 processor or a very late model AMD Ryzen processor in your computer, be very, very careful about using this preview mode because the preview window eats a lot of CPU resources. So I just keep it turned off and don't use it at all. You do have the help, which will open up the help page at Streamlabs. You do have the log out, and that basically logs you out because what's happening is they're backing up your configuration online. Again, there's no charge for doing this if you just use the main Streamlabs OBS. Then we come down here to the settings, and this is an awkward place for the settings as far as I'm concerned. But once you get used to where it's at, it's easy to get to. And in these settings, you'll see that they've basically laid out the settings a little bit differently than they do in the regular OBS Studio. You do have your general settings, which I would leave well enough alone. You then have your stream settings, and here is where you set up your stream type, such as Facebook or other things. You can set up a streaming service, and if you click on that, you'll see that it has all kinds of different options there. Or you can do custom, and I will talk more about custom later in another video when I talk about streaming to multiple different locations. All right. The reason that I wanted to come back to this is I want to show you the Facebook setup once again. So you come into the streaming services, and I'm just going to come down and choose Facebook Live, and then as I do this, I'm going to hit done. And I would have to actually go back to Facebook and get all of those keys and everything for this to be able to go live, but once that is installed, if I were to have left Streamlabs kind of in the way that it was before with the mini feed, then what would end up happening is I would be ready to go for streaming at any particular junction. And you do, by the way, have to always go back to the editor to see what you're doing. But once I click go live, I'd be live on Facebook very, very quickly. All right. Back here in the settings, output is another thing that you need to be aware of. Under streaming and encoder, you are probably going to want to use NVENC if possible. If you're going to be recording this and then uploading it, you can use the software X264. That's pretty standard for most of the video platforms that you're going to be sending to out there. In for streaming service encoder settings, leave that checked. Rate control, leave it at CBR. Bit rate, you can leave it at 6,000, but I will tell you that if you're going to be streaming on Facebook, Facebook will top out generally around 4,000. The higher the bit rate, the better the video will appear. It'll appear more smooth to the end user's eyes. And what we like to do, or what I prefer to do, is use the 6,000, which is good for YouTube. And then Facebook is going to downscale it to a 4,000 or 4,500 rate in any case. Keyframe, you would typically leave this at 0, but Facebook does recommend to 2. I've had no issues leaving it at 0. Preset, I just leave this on quality. You can do max quality if you want the video to be a little bit finer in detail. Profile, leave it at high. I have a little bit higher end system here. GPU, I leave alone. Max B frames, again, for Facebook, this needs to be 2, and that'll usually default to that if you set Facebook up first. If you want to also use Streamlabs to record, and recording is basically you're just taking your time to record the video, and then you will later upload it, you will want to make sure that you change some of these settings. You will want to make sure that the type is set to standard. Most systems will not have any other options here. Recording path. Make sure that this recording path can handle video output. So, if you have a USB stick that's from, 2009, this would not be the place to do it because it probably won't be able to keep up. Generate file name without space. Simply do this. When you upload to YouTube, this is the better option, all right? The recording format. If you're going to be uploading to YouTube, I recommend MP4 or MOV or MKV. Any of those 3 will be fine. Audio track. You're going to pick up 2 through 6. Just uncheck 1 and do all the rest. Recording, okay? Now remember, over here on streaming, I had options also for software. Your late model computers, anything in the last 3 to 5 years, you should use NVENC. However, for recording, all right, a video, you should use software X264. That way, if you want to take it into iMovie or another piece of software to edit it, you'll be a lot happier dealing with this file afterwards. Rescale output, leave that alone. The MUX settings you don't need to worry about. Rate control, leave it CBR. Bit rate here, 3,500 is fine. Again, if you want a little more refinement, you can jump this up to 4,000 or higher, but typically 3,500 is kind of the sweet spot. All right. Audio. Your audio bit rate is going to remain at 160 in this particular setting. Replay buffer, you're just going to enable it. That's not something you're going to necessarily use. All right, under audio, this is basically going to be the audio that's coming into your computer. If your microphone and computer can handle it, set this to 48 kilohertz, make it mono, okay? The fact of the matter is, a lot of us as pastors think that, we have to have stereo everywhere. Church settings really need to be monaural, all right? And so mono is what we want to also have on our Facebook streams. We don't want our voice panning back and forth in an unnatural fashion. So mono just puts the same level out on both channels. The desktop audio device, you'll notice that I have several of these. There is the default. These are the sounds that Windows plays, all right? Audio device 2 I just have disabled. You'll notice that I have the Rodecaster Pro stereo, which is actually a mixer device that I'm borrowing for the next few weeks. But in essence, my microphone is plugged into this, and then this mixer has a special input into the computer. Auxiliary device 2, disable. I would basically make sure that you only enable what you need. If you do need desktop sound, enable it. However, if you listen to a couple of my videos, you'll hear terrible echoes, and that is because I was allowing there to be some playback through the desktop audio that I could not hear while I was recording, but the computer was picking it up. That was going out onto the stream, and it made a terrible echo. So rule of thumb, disable every audio source except the one you absolutely need, which in most cases will be your microphone or your stream camera microphone. All right. Oops, sorry about that. Coming back into those again, as you're kind of looking at the audio, you'll just leave that alone. Video is where things get interesting. All right. I want to just go over these two things. Base canvas resolution. Here's the deal. This is what you see. I prefer to make the base and the output the same. I'm not using this platform to stream games, so I'm not concerned that I'm seeing the highest resolution. This is for my second monitor anyway. I really want this to be the 720p resolution. And while we're looking at this, I want to explain a couple of things. You may have heard of 1080, 720, and 480 and other things, all right? A lot of people trying to sell you televisions will say, wow, it's 1080p, okay? And that stands for 1080 progressive. So in essence, the 1080 and the 720 and even the 480 from the older output is dealing with your vertical resolution. Okay, so in this case, if I was talking about 1080p, that means that my computer resolution, my television resolution, or my streaming resolution is 1920 pixels wide, 1080 pixels high. That is 1080. 1080p simply means that all of the lines are drawn top to bottom. Okay, we then have 720, all right, or 720p. And what most people don't realize is that this is 1280 by 720. You might remember older monitors would do 1280 by 768. That was just to give you a little bit more vertical room. But 720p is what you're probably going to want to use, because that's what is going to make life really happy for you on Facebook and on YouTube, unless you plan on spending days uploading 4K video streams, all right? And you'll notice that there's also a much higher 2560 by 1080 on my system. That's because I have a widescreen monitor. Just ignore that. You're concerned only with those two. So I like to see my base canvas be the same as my output. And I would say most churches need to simply focus on 720p output. That is still very high resolution video, but your bandwidth requirements are much less. Downscale filter, leave it bicubic. FPS type, leave it at common. FPS value, I would personally leave this at 30, but if you do want your videos to look a little bit more like professional video, you can jump this up to 48 or 60. 60 is really considered to be broadcast quality. I still think that 30 is fine. I haven't had any complaints with those particular outputs. Hotkeys, I will not be taking time to go over this. You'll want to read the manual, but you can set up hotkeys to start your streaming. This is good for some people. However, the way my brain works, I use a different method of handling this, okay? There are some advanced issues. Process priority. If your computer can tolerate it, set this to above normal. That'll make sure that Streamlabs is able to do what it needs to do. If you were doing gaming, you would probably set this a little bit differently, all right? But obviously, that's not our concern. Color format, leave. YUV color space, leave it. All of this should just be set to the default. Game overlay, ignore it. You simply will not need it. Scene collections. This is where you can save various things with relationship to your scenes and other things. This is actually something that works fairly well, but it is experimental in Streamlabs, so you do have to be careful with it. I will tell you that once you create your initial scenes, they will always be there for you every time you load into the system, unless you change the overlay file. Notifications, you can turn on sounds and other things if you want to be annoyed while you're streaming. Appearance, there's many different themes you can use. The night theme works well since it doesn't draw your eye to the screen too much. Face masks, I do not use this, but if you enable this, you can deal with various things overlaying your video device. Remote control. If you have an iOS or an Android device, you can download the OBS Streamlabs remote control. You'll take a picture there of the little QR code up on the screen, and then you'll have the ability to control your different scenes from your device. And this is kind of nice, particularly if you have another person helping you out with this. And then, of course, installed apps, you probably won't have this. These are simply related to something that I was testing with the Streamlabs Prime. And I will tell you, it's not worth it. Don't buy it. Just ignore it. Stay away from it. Back into this, I'm going to kind of jump back over and go through some different things that we have set up just to kind of make things very easy. I do have a streaming soon video, all right? When we go live, this is the video that plays, and you'll notice that the resolution on it's a little bit odd right now. That's simply because of some changes I'm making while I'm videoing right now. But that'll go out live, and you do notice, by the way, that the microphone is being picked up at this point. If you're putting a streaming soon out, you need to make sure that your microphone is turned off either at the mixer, like this, or you need to make sure that you click over here and turn that off, okay? Otherwise, you will be talking and your stream will be able to hear you before you want to, all right? We then put in a pre-service loop, and for us, that's simply a series of announcements that we are running inside of Proclaim. And once we do that, that just makes things a little bit easier for us to have that running. I also tend to put some background music with this. One caveat to that, Be careful that you're not using background music that's not approved, because if you put it up on YouTube, you'll get a digital millennial copyrights notice, and your video will probably be taken down. And on YouTube, you only get 3 strikes before you cannot use that channel any longer. All right. And it does not matter if you're a church, they don't care. They are simply in the process of making sure that this is not done. So make sure if you do music, you're careful about what music you're utilizing there. I also have announcements. Again, it's just a streaming loop that is running in Proclaim for us. I have a worship team remote, and this will not work right now because this is actually a second PC streaming to this PC across a local area network. That's an advanced topic. I will be covering that around video 435 or so. Live stream. This is the one that I normally use, all right? And again, you'll see it kind of come back with the way that you're probably used to seeing it. The only thing that's a little bit different between this and my OBS studio is that I've just put a frame around this. And these were just some things that I'm working on as we're going through it. I also have a different live stream where I change the focal point a little bit, and then we have ending announcements, all right? And in each one of these, notice that the sources change, okay? There are different sources in each one of these, and this is the wonderful avenue that you can go down as you create different setups and configurations that you may find useful. I think that's going to draw us pretty much to the close. That'll help you get started with OBS. I will be doing another video to talk more specifically about Facebook Live and also YouTube. The YouTube video will probably be the next one in line because getting set up on YouTube is a little bit more difficult than Facebook. In Facebook, if you have an account, you can live stream, particularly if you have a page already set up, and it's quite easy to do that, all right? But YouTube takes a little bit more setup for you to get ready to stream. And so what I really recommend that you do is probably use Facebook first, all right? And then get your YouTube channel set up. Whether you as a pastor use a personal channel or a church channel, however you see fit to do that. And after that point, you'll get the option later on, 24 hours after you ask for it, to begin to stream live. And the YouTube is a little bit more manual of a setup. So we'll go through that and show you how that all works. It's not too difficult to get that running, particularly in Streamlabs OBS. It does take some of the work out of that. So we'll run through that process and show you how to do that, all right? Hope that suits you well. You have a great day, and we are now going off air.